Unit 1, Lesson 2. Lesson 2, Installing hard disks. Installing a new hard disk is one of the most common upgrade tasks. It's an easy way to extend the life of a computer that is running out of storage space. What are the types of hard disk drives? When you install a new internal or external hard disk, you can boost your total disk space several times over because hard disks are much bigger today than just 2 or 3 years ago. 1. External hard disks. The simplest way to add more hard disk space is to plug in an external hard disk. If you add an external hard disk, it can't function as your primary hard disk where you install Windows, but you can use it as a secondary disk to store programs and files. Adding an external hard disk is a good way to create plenty of extra space to store digital photos, videos, audio files, and other files that require a large amount of disk space. To install an external hard disk, all you have to do is plug it into your computer and connect the power cord. Most of these hard disks plug into a USB port, but some plug into a FireWire, also known as IEEE 1394 or External Serial ATA eSATA port. 2. Internal hard disks. Internal hard disks connect to your computer's motherboard using an IDE interface or SATA interface. Most new hard drives come with either an IDE or SATA connection cable, depending on the type of drive. Installing an internal hard disk takes a bit more work, especially if you plan to make the new disk your primary hard disk where you install Windows. To install an internal hard disk, you should be comfortable opening your computer case and connecting cables. Most desktop computers have room for at least 2 internal hard disks. Laptops have room for only 1 hard disk. If you are replacing the primary hard disk rather than adding a secondary disk, you'll have to install Windows after you connect the disk. Please note, many internal hard disks contain jumper pins that you must set to designate a hard disk as a primary master disk where you install Windows, or as a secondary subordinate disk where you store programs and files. These jumpers are small plastic sleeves that you must place on the correct metal jumper pins. How can we remove and replace an internal hard disk? To remove and replace an internal hard disk, do the following. 1. Turn off your computer, disconnect the power, and remove your computer's cover. 2. Unplug all cables connected to the hard disk, and then remove the hard disk. Pay attention to which cables you unplug, since you will plug the same cables into the new hard disk. If there are any screws holding in the hard disk, you will need a small screwdriver to unscrew them. 3. Insert the new hard disk and connect it to the same cables that are in the same places as the hard disk you removed. One cable connects the disk to the computer's power supply, and the other cable connects the disk to the computer's motherboard. How can we add a new internal hard disk without removing an existing disk? To add a new internal hard disk without removing an existing disk, do the following. 1. turn off your computer, disconnect the power, and remove your computer's cover. 2. Insert the new hard disk into an empty hard disk bay in your computer case. You might need a small screwdriver to screw the disk into your case. Different cases have different ways of holding hard disks. 3. Connect one cable from the computer's power supply to the power connector on the back of the hard disk. 4. Depending on what type of hard disk you have, connect the IDE cable or SATA cable from the back of the disk to the IDE or SATA connector on the computer's motherboard. IDE cables are wide and flat with large connectors, while SATA cables are thin with small connectors.